Hi everyone, welcome to Talks at Google. My name is Dana Hahn-Klein, and today it is my pleasure to welcome Davis Guggenheim. So you are here today for He Named Me Malala. It was a wonderful documentary. Can you tell us how you got involved in it?
Well, the producers of the movie, Walter Parks and Laurie McDonald, wanted to make a movie. They had gotten the life rights to her to make a movie with an actor, and they went and met with her where she lives in Birmingham, England. And they were so blown away, they thought, who could play her? So they thought it should be a documentary, so they brought it to me.
It's probably a good decision.
Yeah.
So they brought it to you.
Probably.
It was an excellent decision. So they brought it to you, and
saw the movie.
I did see the movie, and it was an excellent decision.
Who would play her?
There's no one who could play her. She's
Okay, so
except for herself, you know, which she did.
Non-documentary played by Malala herself. That's interesting.
I'd see that as a follow-up, maybe.
Yeah, that's cool.
So were you on board right away, or did you have to be convinced, or were you just like, I'm so excited, I'd love to make this documentary?
They called me and I said, give me a few days. And I just read everything I could read. Because the story of a girl being shot on her school bus is this, but I wanted more, and I wanted to know if there's something I could add to it, because there was a book about her and everything. And I immediately fixated very quickly on this father-daughter relationship. You know, her father names her after a girl who speaks out and is killed for speaking out. I felt like an epic Greek thing. And so she's born with this name that has all this meaning to it. And it made me want to know, did she become this girl just because her father named her this, or because of another reason?
He sort of set her destiny possibly for her.
Yeah.
One of the, that was one of the things I noticed, that it's this kind of beautiful father-daughter story. What was it like striking the balance between telling his story, because it is such an important part of the backstory of how she came to be, how her personality was shaped, and telling her story, because they are so intertwined. I think she said at one point, like, they're like two extensions of the same soul.
He says, we're like one soul in two different bodies. And in fact, there was one of my editors said, we can't put that in the movie, it's too creepy. But I said, no, it's beautiful. Like the idea, and I have two daughters, this idea of one soul in two different bodies, this attachment that they have. And it's really, when you see the movie, there's this incredible attachment. And I have these two daughters, and they are a complete mystery to me. Like my son makes perfect sense. It's like, we just look, it's like but my daughters, I don't know how to talk to them, and I want them to feel my love, and I want them to be anything they want to be, and yet I have no clue as to how to be a father. And so making this movie, I found out that I learned from this Pakistani man 7,000 miles away from where I live, this Muslim man, how to be a father to my own children.
It's interesting you bring that up, that you connect with your son easily, and Malala's mother is this figure in this movie. You know, obviously she loves her mother very much, but I was almost expecting to see more of her.
Yeah.
But it kind of became clear that she has this very unique connection with her father. Was there at any point were you going to try and explore the mother's story more, or was it immediately?
Everybody asks about it because the mom is sort of hovering in the background, and she's a traditional Pashtun woman, and sort of being on camera is seen as immodest. And so it took me a very long time to get her to want to be in the movie. In fact, she didn't want to be in the movie at all. And then at the very end, I showed them a cut of the movie, and the mother whispered something to Malala in Pashtun, and Malala says, my mother wants to be in the movie. so I interviewed her at the last thing I did, and so she's in the movie. But, and if you know this family as I know them, you realize that the mother is the source of Malala's spiritual strength. And Malala has this tremendous sense of forgiveness and right and wrong that she gets from her faith. And she gets her mission from her father, but she gets this sort of steely strength from her mom. And just last week, Torpakai, her mom, gave my kids these beautiful Pashtun clothes. And my kids from LA are like dressing like Pashtuns now. It's like a very small
awesome.
world.
It's a cultural exchange.
Yeah.
Well, as you said, you obviously had to get to know this family to make this film. And in a sense, because you are making a film, it's a little bit your story too. What are the parts that you think you brought to it that helped enhance Malala's story?
Well, that's really interesting. I made this movie, Waiting for Superman, which is about the public school system. And in that case, I narrated that movie, and I put my opinion in it. It was like an editorial. It was like, Davis thinks this. And that's very different from this movie, where I really feel like my job in this was to pull their story out of them. And I said to this when I met them, I was like, let me help you tell your own story. So if you were listening just casually, you would think that Malala's narrating it. She isn't. But she's actually talking to me about what happened. And in that discussion, she tells her own story. And so that was I guess if you were to say I'm in the movie, it's only in a choice, the sense that I decided not to tell this big political story, this like the rise of the Taliban in that part of the world, which is a very important thing to explore. But to me, what was interesting is this universal question of what is it about a girl growing up in this world? What is it that makes her feel confident? And what would lead this ordinary girl to make this extraordinary choice, this brave choice to risk her life for something she believes, that actually turns her into this incredible person? I wanted to go really deep into those choices.
Yeah, I thought one of the wonderful things that I got of it as an audience member was Malala is this wonderful, eloquent, powerful, inspiring figure. But there are these wonderful little moments where she's a teenage girl.
Yeah, she's a girl.
And you realize how much kind of responsibility we've assigned to her and how much she's taken on herself. But then, she's giggling about boys she likes that she doesn't want to admit she likes.
Yeah.
And so for you, is that something you discovered getting to know them, or is that something that you had an inkling of going into this, that you wanted to tell a regular person's story?
Well, now I know how ignorant I was. And I guess it's nice to go in, when you're making a documentary, to start kind of ignorant and educate yourself by making the movie and sort of as your world opens. But I really thought I knew a lot about Muslim culture and Muslim people, and I really didn't. And so when I rang the doorbell of their house, I said I had all this preconceived notions. And then Malala answered the door, and I went inside, and they're kind of loud and chaotic and funny, and they're teasing each other. Malala's punching her brothers, and and she's online looking up pictures of Brad Pitt, and yet they're also very deep people with a sense of purpose. And I was like, oh, their kitchen table and their family is like my kitchen table. And to see that ordinariness, to see that she's, on one hand, a girl who can go up to President Obama and ask him a question that no adult would be brave enough to ask. She asked him about, why are you sending drones into my country? She was 17 at the time. I would never dare ask that question. It's probably the most sensitive question of his entire presidency. People will look back and say, why did you do that? She can do that very easily, and then she can go home and pick up her laptop and search for pictures of Roger Federer. It's this double life that she has, and it's important to see her that way, because if you see her as this sort of larger than life icon, you forget that she's just an ordinary girl, and that's important, because I really want this more than anything. I want young girls to love this movie, to feel like it speaks to them, and that they can have a hero that they can believe in, not just a hero that tells them that they're fat or they're dumb or they're not famous enough, and that this girl actually is inspiring in a way that can challenge girls to speak out more.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of lovely seeing that, and it was also lovely hearing her unbridled passion for education, and not just in the context of speaking to the UN General Assembly. You asked her what her favorite book was, and it looked like you'd asked her to make Sophie's Choice or something like that. She was just like, no, I can't pick it. And as someone who this is a company of people who are interested in education, and for ourselves, I think for us it's something we very much relate to. And obviously with Waiting for Superman, it's something that you're passionate about. What are some of the other things that you think we can do, in addition to helping Malala, to kind of push education forward?
Well, one thing is there's a lot of lip service we give to education. It's really important in our kids. I've got 3 kids, and it's like, and then it's really, there's 2 messages. One is it's really important, and then you're with your friends, and it's like, it's really boring, and I have to go home, or I have to do my homework. It's a chore. And when you see this story, you see a girl who is who loves her school. She grows up in her school. There are other girls in her town that don't get to go to school, so it's like this precious, precious thing. And now the Taliban comes in and starts blowing up schools and starts flogging girls for going to school. So suddenly school is the most precious thing in her life, which for all of us in America anyway, it can be something that we take for granted, or it's like a means to an end. I have to do this to get somewhere. And the idea that these ideas that her father was teaching her were precious, and that to remind ourselves of that, and that, you know, it could easily be taken away from us. And the other thing is that if you look at human beings as I do, that every human being has some untapped potential. I mean, clearly here at Google, people have gotten to where they are because they've had this potential that they found a way to tap. That probably is so much more potential that everyone here can still be tapped. But you look at people who don't have an education as people who have yet to tap that resource. And if you don't, it's a very tragic thing, but it's also what's so hard, it's an invisible thing. You can see refugees without a home, and that's something you can look at and struggle with, but an unfulfilled potential is hidden and invisible. And this idea that Malala is showing us that is what makes this story so beautiful.
Yeah, I don't have a follow-up to that. I'd love to talk about a storytelling kind of device you used. I love the animation in this film. It was beautiful. You know, it was a great way to kind of not fill in the gaps, but illustrate what they were saying in an interpretive way. How did you decide to sort of use that as a vehicle?
I try not to make documentaries that are good for you. You know, do you want to see The Martian this weekend, or do you want to see He Named Me Malala? And, you know, there is some of that where you say, you know, we really should go see this movie, and sometimes that's important. But I want to fight against that. I want to tell a really good story. I want people to be moved. I want people to laugh. I want people to cry. And at the end of it, I want it to sort of move them. And maybe there's a message in there, but you know, let's get to that later. You know, maybe you think about it on your car ride home. But I like my movies to be an experience. And so I'm always finding ways in which to tell the story in a new way. And I came to this thing where it's like, they're telling me the story of these things a long time ago, and it's like, let's build an animation company in my studio. So my office is in Venice. We built an animation studio, and we, instead of, you know, having serious photos of the Swat Valley now, we got these young animators from CalArts in California, and we drew these very beautiful, painterly, almost storybook images of their life in Pakistan, and it has another feeling to it. And so you really feel like you're watching a movie, and you're diving into a world that's going to sort of put a trance on you.
Yeah, it's I mean, they were beautiful, and it was in stark contrast to sort of the documentary footage that I'm assuming you guys got from the news, and you know, the previous historical footage of the actual kind of conditions they were in.
Well, the one thing we're fighting against here in America, and I realized it, is how ignorant I was of this very deep, rich culture and this very deep and rich religion, is that and this is a company that's about information, is that the information that most Americans get of this part of the world is very narrow, very negative. And we know that, like, you know, you get images of ISIS and horrible things, and not just horrible things, but horrible things for a very long time. And things that feel like they'll never get better. And so when you see them I always think about my own emotional state, when I see these stories, I just want to do this, I want to turn away. And so I thought my job is just to introduce you to this beautiful family that is not that. They're funny, they're irreverent, they're hilarious. And the world where they lived in Pakistan was actually not a dangerous place, it was paradise. And so part of this movie is about Paradise Lost, and how the paradise that all of us live in could easily be corrupted in the same way theirs was. You know, when Malala was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it was a beautiful, peaceful place. And then only when the Taliban came in did the snake come into the garden, and their world, this precious world that they created, was under threat. And that's so much more interesting than the narrative, this sort of limited diet of information we get from this part of the world.
Yeah, I think you said it beautifully, and it's one of those things where it's just like, what if that were to happen to one of us? Like if suddenly you couldn't go back to the place that you were born and couldn't be with your friends for threat of death. I don't think that's anything we as Americans, Westerners, whatever, ever think about crossing our minds, and I don't think it's necessarily something that would have crossed her mind until it happened to her. So it's just this sort of horrifying thing to watch happen to someone who is so positive and wonderful, and who knows what would have happened if it hadn't happened.
But if you heard about Malala, as a lot of us did, a girl who got shot on her school bus, you think, oh, this is just a scary, dangerous place where this happens all the time, and it's just like the streets of Chicago, people get killed every night. It's like it's just another thing. But no, the story, when you watch it, has so much more dimension to it, and it is so important for us to go deeper than this sort of surface story. And you know this with Google, like you do the first search in the Wikipedia page and it tells you the first two things, and that's one thing. But when you know how to go deeper and you can find the richness of a really nuanced story, that's where you learn about the world in a really important way.
Did you feel a sense of responsibility telling this story? It's very much Malala's story, and as you've said, a lot of us, I think, I hope we're familiar, at least with the basic details of it. But this is sort of opening up to this massive medium where, people are going to see all of this. Like, where did you feel your role, responsibility-wise, came in?
If you ask my wife, she would tell you that the most miserable, most consistently miserable, like from gutter to despair to pit of despair, I was below the pit of despair for about 6 months making this movie, because I knew that this was a special story. And I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility to get it right because she's so special. But the movie wasn't working. So I would have a cut of the movie and I'd bring friends over and we'd watch the movie. And people would be scratching their heads. And I was like, maybe this is the movie I can't pull off. Maybe this will suck forever. And only over a very long time, we edited for 18 months, which is a really long, with 3 editors, did I finally figure out sort of how to put it together. Because it's a very complicated story structure when you see it. But yeah, I mean, because we don't get enough information from this part of the world, because my daughters don't get enough real heroes, because her voice is so unique and so clear, I felt a tremendous responsibility to get it right, so that a lot of people would get to know her the way I got to know her.
I'm curious what from your perspective wasn't working about it, or do we not want to go back to that dark place?
No. I mean, everyone who watched it would say, "Oh, this is good intentions, not good film," and it's when something sucks. So it was not good for a long time. And sort of disjointed, confusing, boring, full-on suck.
Thanks for taking the time and not abandoning it and keeping at it, because it's tough on any sort of project. I think we all know here we want to kind of throw it away and just be like, oh, it's someone else's problem now, or I can't do it, or so it's, I think good things only come out of that kind of struggle.
Yeah, that struggle, that's true. And when you get in a bind, creatively, sometimes it's your way out of it that helps you find those interesting ideas. Like the animation was like that. It's like, well, how do we tell the story of the girl she was named after 100 years ago? Like, well, you can't, like, what am I going to do? Do reenactment with guys with helmets, like with spears running after each other? Like, that's stupid. And so why not animate it? So why not do something completely opposite? Something you would never see in a documentary. And why not get this great composer, Tom Newman, who did the music for this movie. He did Finding Nemo and WALL-E and Shawshank Redemption? And why not get a proper film composer and make it feel like a movie like you're going to on a Saturday night?
Was there kind of a magic moment for you where it came together, or was it just kind of slowly realizing, like, oh, it doesn't suck anymore?
Yeah, there was one screening where you just like, the lights came up and everyone just didn't say anything. And you just felt like, oh, they have just experienced what I have experienced in getting to know her. And I think for those of you who are watching and you watch this film, there is this tremendous sense of like wonder about her, and this sense of like, oh, I never knew that before, but also this sense of, oh my gosh, what this girl did, this unknown girl from the middle of nowhere, took this incredibly brave choice to speak out for what she believed, and she helped change the world, and she captured everyone's imagination. And the idea of if you go through that and experience that, at the other end, the audience is like, and there's no describing that. I can only just go.
Yes, it was wonderful, and there were definitely a few moments in our screening where the air just kind of went out of the room in a good way. It was just like we felt it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm always trying for. Is like there's documentary, which this is a documentary, but there's a documentary, and then there's an experience. And I'm working on the experience.
It's also story. Like you know, you're telling a story. It happens to be based in reality. It happens to be a person's story, but it's still a story, and it's beginning, middle, end, and you know, it's a journey for us all to go on.
And people overlook that. Like storytelling is just like, yeah, storytelling, but it's
easy.
No, it's and my father made documentaries. He always said, you know, movies are a story. You have to learn how to tell a story. It's a complete mystery. Like, what is a good story? Like, we know how to build a chair, but we know how to build a table. We know how a car works, but how do you tell a story? And so that itself is really delicate and complicated and complex.
I'd love to know what was one of the most rewarding parts of working on the film for you.
You know, I've directed movies, I've directed commercials, I've directed a lot of television. And all those things are fun and sometimes inspiring and sometimes incredible. But the idea of making a documentary that actually has this larger thing to it, there's no better feeling in the world. Like with Inconvenient Truth, the feeling like I told the story and people are changed after having seen it, and people are changing their lives, and the conversation is moving forward. And even Waiting for Superman, where it's like, you know, people are debating this, and people are disagreeing with this movie, or people are liking this movie, but there's no better feeling in the world. And introducing this girl and her father to the world is such a wonderful experience. There's no better feeling in the world.
So what's one of the most surprising things you learned about Malala and her family during this experience? And then what's one of the most surprising things you learned about yourself during the experience? Two-parter.
The surprising thing is it's like a grocery list of surprising things. I mean, just how funny she is and how kind she is. Like, I got an email from her today saying, you know, the movie's coming out today in LA and New York. And, you know, I've made movies with famous actors and famous politicians, and no one cares about me. I'm just the director who annoys them with a camera. Malala's the very first person of any movie I've ever made who she sent me, and she goes, I know this is a vulnerable, stressful day for you, and I know that the reviews are coming out, and I just want to tell you that I love this movie and I'm proud of you. An 18-year-old girl. I mean, how remarkable is that? I mean, she's got lots of things to do, but the fact that she's just had that kind of kindness about her to reach across and think about me is very lovely. So I mean, just wow.
I don't think you could ask for a better endorsement than that.
Oh, and she goes, you know, you have 5 stars. You have my 5 stars.
Done. Sold.
But I'm your favorite Yousafzai. So
My last question for you is, what's a subject, either documentary or fictional, that you haven't covered yet that you'd like to?
Well, I feel like as a director, you have a cup that as you tell your stories, the cup empties of this fluid that is full of something. And you fill that cup by living and by reading and experiencing things. And so if your cup is full, then you're ready to make a movie. And when your cup is empty, you should never make a movie. And right now my cup is past empty. It's been, the dashboard has been like...
Change filter.
Mixed metaphor, cup and dashboard. But the idea is that like my plan is to be a dad. But there's so many stories out there. There's so much to tell. There's so many things that aggravate me and make me feel passionate. And so it could be anything. It could be anything.
Well, we look forward to seeing whatever that may be someday.
Thank you.
Hi, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm very excited to watch it. I'm gonna pick it over Martian.
What's that? You're gonna pick it over The Martian?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Martian looks good, by the way.
Yeah, I know, but still. So I'm very interested, actually, that how knowing and interacted with Malala changed you. Mm-hmm. How she impacted you in a way that, especially you mentioned your relationship with your daughters.
Yeah. So I figure, in LA, we believe in equality, and girls are equal to boys, and over there in Pakistan, that's a patriarchal society, and Malala's father believed, not only did he say she was equal, he believed she was equal, and he acted on it. And sometimes, after I would visit them, I would come home to my house, and I'd say, you say your daughter's equal, but like when you read the newspaper and you want to share it with somebody, I do it with my son. And I look past my daughter. And I think, in Pakistan, there are these really strong lines of discrimination. Girls can't go to school, or girls can't have a name, or girls have to wear a certain thing. In our world, there are much more invisible lines. There are cues that I think girls get. They're told they're equal, and they believe they're equal to a certain age, and then there's this thing called the Ophelia complex. Have you heard this? Where, like at a certain age, girls start to shrink, and I worry about that with my daughters. And so I would go home after spending time with this family and go home and say, I not only have to say my daughter's equal, but I have to believe it. And I have to act on it. I mean, he took the family tree that had, and you haven't seen the movie, but so one of the scenes is when she was born, there's a family tree. And it's the Yousafzai clan, Pashtun clan, and it goes back 300 years. And he unrolls it, and meticulously handwritten family tree. But on the family tree going back 300 years, there are no women. They didn't think that you should record a woman. So the Yousafzai women don't exist. And the day after she was born, he takes a pen and draws a line and he writes Malala. And he says, I'm not going to just give lip service to this. I'm going to say that she is, she exists. And there's a wonderful thing when you go to another culture, is that one culture, it's like this feedback loop. And so I'm telling them things about my daughters, and they're saying, but then suddenly they're telling me something. And so I learned, that's what I learned. And I go home tonight, a different father, because I met this father and this daughter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's interesting to hear you say that. I come from a family where there's only daughters, so
Right.
my dad didn't have a choice in terms of it. There's just two of us, but it's nice to see someone else leading by example and seeing somebody else who does have a dad who's equal. My dad's wonderful and supportive, and he loves us for who we are. But it's encouraging, and I don't ever think I felt growing up that like I was meant to be inferior. We're in a very Western society. I grew up in the West, and it's
Right.
I never felt unequal.
Right.
You know, I was encouraged to pursue education.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, and so it's really frustrating for me to see that there's people in the world who don't have that same opportunity.
But when you went out of the home and into college and things like that, did you feel cues like that, or didn't matter? Meaning, or even in the workplace, or even in college, do you feel like you always feel treated equally?
Oh no, no, which is
Right.
why it's wonderful to have Malala as a, you know, she's this young kind of symbol of equality. I think she even says at one point, you know, women are better than men, but it's not about that. It's about,
Yeah.
you know, being given the same opportunities and all that sort of
Right.
fair play. But it's wonderful to see somebody else who had a dad who didn't treat her any differently, or in fact encouraged her to do that. And it's nice to hear you as a father saying, like, I want to look at my daughters and
Right.
and look at them as, I want to put my money where my mouth is, and,
Yeah.
and kind of treat them with the same sort of
Yeah.
thing. I think that's what Malala's asking of all of us. And it's,
Yeah.
you know, if she can get you to change just in a micro way,
Yeah.
hopefully she can get the rest of us too.
There's a story that her father told me that still in parts of Pakistan, women don't have names. So you would go to a doctor's office, and I would bring my daughter, and it'd be the daughter of Davis, or my wife would be the wife of Davis, or my mother. So my mother doesn't have a name. It's the mother of Davis. And so that seems like, have a name. Well, you know, we have names. We name things. No big deal. But for them, having a name is like the first sign of
Personage.
of saying you exist. And in fact, in Nazi Germany, the quickest way to sort of destroy people is to say, you don't have a name, we're going to put a number on you. We're going to tattoo a number on you. You are now nameless. And so this idea of naming has a real sort of strong kind of epic thing to it, and that's why that's in the title.
I think it's an important thing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
my
Named Me
pleasure.
Malala is in theaters.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be here.